What does acceptance mean to you? Does it mean getting accepted into a prestigious university? Does it mean that you are encouraged from others to follow your dream? Perhaps it's just wanting to be believed in. No matter what, if you aren't accepted, you might just lose any confidence in yourself that you have. Kung Fu Panda, a seemingly silly movie, explores this as a very integral part of the movie. Throughout the entire storyline, Po is looked down upon. No one believes he can amount to anything. Even his adoptive father just sees him as being good at making noodles. This causes Po to have a very hard time believing in himself. Unfortunately, the first step to anything is believing in yourself, and Po just doesn't. He doubts himself a lot. The movie is focused on this very concept of acceptance and believing in yourself. Let's take a look at this spectacular movie and get into the character that DreamWorks created so perfectly. In the beginning, we get a dream of Po being a kung fu master, and we soon find out that he's just an ordinary soup maker with his father at his shop in the Valley of Peace. We learn very quickly that his dream is to become a kung fu master, but he is pretty much stuck as the noodle boy. His dream from the beginning of the movie makes us think the movie might be of something else and not Po becoming that kung fu master. Maybe he was telling that story about himself, but of course we come to find out that that is not what was happening. He tells his dad that he had a dream, and when his dad asks him what kind of dream it was, instead of telling him the truth, he hides it and tells his dad that it was a dream about noodles, which is not at all the dream he had. He is too afraid to upset his dad with anything other than telling him he had a dream about noodles. This shows an extreme lack of confidence in the character, as someone who had a ton of confidence wouldn't be afraid to tell people what actually happened. Low confidence is one of the things Po deals with for almost the entirety of the movie. It also doesn't help that no matter where he is, he just does not feel like he belongs. He wants to do kung fu, but it's just so far out of his reach that he never thinks it possible. He abandons his plan to bring a noodle cart up to sell noodles during the celebration of deciding who the Dragon Warrior is, but he gives up on that because it's just way too hard to get that noodle cart all the way up all those hundreds of steps. Unfortunately, he makes it up in no time left, and unfortunately, the gates lock him out. This starts a scene in which I get a few laughs out of. He is so desperate to see his idols that he tries anything to get in. Po's dad comes to stop him when he tries to shoot himself up with fireworks. And he finally tells his dad that the dream wasn't about noodles and that he loves kung fu and just wants to see his idols and who becomes a dragon warrior. At first, the fireworks seemingly don't work, and he goes to return to the noodle shop. But before he can stand back up, the fireworks activate and he's shot into the sky. Just before Oogway chooses the Dragon Warrior, he falls down right in front of Tigress, one of the Furious Five. He looks up and sees that Master Oogway is pointing to him, and he is now named the Dragon Warrior. This surprises everyone, including himself. Suddenly, he is forced into the life he has always dreamed of, working alongside his idols and being trained by the best kung fu master in China. Understandably, the Furious Five and Shifu are just a little bit upset that he was chosen as a dragon warrior and not one of them. Unfortunately, this comes at a cost, because throughout the movie, we can see that Po is very often made fun of. In fact, they try to get rid of him at first. What is imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome is basically the feeling of not being good enough. Like you don't deserve what you've accomplished. This is a major part of Po's story, as he constantly feels like he doesn't belong and that he does not deserve to be the dragon warrior. Overcoming this is no easy task. Throughout the first few days, Shifu does his best to make Po quit, just because he doesn't feel like Po is worthy of being the dragon warrior. Of course, he hasn't yet given him a chance, but that's why he's trying to force Po to quit. Unfortunately, he is unwilling to properly train him or train him in a way that works for him. Of course, this is because his primary goal is to make him quit. Obviously, if the person who's meant to be mentoring you is not doing their job and trying to get rid of you, it's going to have a very negative impact on someone. In fact, it is a detriment for Po and would be a detriment for anyone else in the same situation. The Furious Five constantly make fun of him and make jokes at his own expense. One in particular involved the Furious Five making a joke that he might not even be able to see his own feet. You can see that insecurity creeps right back onto Po's face, and he even tries to see his own feet. Even trying his best during that day does not net him any acceptance from Shifu or the Furious Five. Someone like Po is of course going to be frustrated and upset that when he finally gets a chance to work with those he idolizes, they continue to make fun of him. It's human nature, or in the case of the movie, Panda nature. One of the best scenes for getting a look into Po's psyche comes up right after this moment. He accidentally enters Crane's room when he's trying to sleep. Po is very excited to meet Crane one-on-one, as he hasn't really had the chance to speak to them normally at all. Crane is trying his best to be nice. Unfortunately, he lets out that he doesn't belong here, and Po's insecurities come right up to the surface. His imposter syndrome is right there, and Po believes he means that he is not supposed to be at the Jade Palace. One can't assume that is exactly what Crane meant, but he very quickly backtracks and says he doesn't belong in his room. Po awkwardly leaves the room and runs into Tigress in one of the next rooms down. Tigress is probably the meanest one there. She repeats what Crane says, that he does not belong there, but specifies this time that he does not belong in the Jade Palace and that he is a disgrace to Kung Fu. Po already feels like he doesn't belong, and this comment from Tigress just cements that he's not supposed to be there, like he has been thinking this entire time. Overall, it's not a good situation for Po to be in. He feels like the Five hate him, he feels like he doesn't belong there. Everything is just compounding upon itself, and it's very hard for him to get through. After a meeting with Oogway under the peach tree, which we will get to very soon, Po decides to keep pushing through his imposter syndrome. He believes that he can be made into something other than himself, that he can be made into the Dragon Warrior. The next day, he's not found in his room, and everyone thinks that he quit. But they find Po trying to do splits, and he gets stuck. So Crane has to help him off. And then Shifu puts him through a day of rigorous training, specifically designed to make him quit. He fights all of the Furious Five. And then at the end, he even fights Shifu every time he gets his butt kicked. But he always says that he will not give up. He will not disappoint Shifu, his new master, because real Kung Fu masters never quit. After what he went through, it makes sense that Po would go look for solace somewhere. We feel his pain as a lot of us just don't feel accepted a lot of the time. What I like about his character and what it teaches us is that you can push through the imposter syndrome and keep trying your best to believe in yourself that you can accomplish this task. This is one of the many reasons I think the people at DreamWorks made a fantastic character. When he finally gets back up to the palace, he's actually bonding with a couple of the Furious Five, Mantis and Viper. Mantis is trying to do acupuncture to relieve the pain that Po is going through after his beating he had earlier in the day. They laugh and they actually have a thoughtful conversation together. Unfortunately, that does not last long, as they get onto the topic of the antagonist, Tai Lung. Tigress comes in and tells the story to Po in such a way that will directly hurt him. After the story, she goes and says, and now he is stuck with a big, fat panda who takes everything like a joke. Of course, this is not something you should really say to someone who is already having a ton of doubts about themselves. Being told something like this is obviously going to compound on top of everything else and make the imposter syndrome possibly much worse than it already is. If you really look deep into the story, all the main problems come about because of his imposter syndrome. It is the root cause of everything. If you need some inspiration on how to write imposter syndrome, Kung Fu Panda is a very, very good example for you to look at, which is part of the reason I'm looking at it today. This movie may be silly at its heart, but it tells some very good messages to its viewers. There is a reason that this is one of my favorite movies of all time, animated or not. I deal with imposter syndrome all the time, so I know exactly what it feels like. Monkey and Crane also bond with him a little later when he makes them noodles for dinner. Everyone but Tigress, of course, tell him that his soup that he made is very, very good. In these moments, after all the struggle he's gone through up until this point, he gets to feel what it's like to be accepted by his idols completely. They've taken notice that he is trying his best to learn this and become the Dragon Warrior. He feels what it's like to be part of something, part of being with his idols and being accepted by them. This, however, does not last. Let's backtrack some and talk about Master Oogway and his wisdom. He is the wise sage character that everyone loves, like from Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. Master Oogway's wisdom is important to the development of Po. In fact, without Oogway, the story may have come out to a very different outcome. Shifu does eventually come around, but it takes a conversation with his mentor, Oogway, to be able to do so. And honestly, Oogway has some very good advice, not just for Po, but for everyone that watched the movie. Because of this, I wanted to go over Master Oogway in his own section, but also because he plays such an important role in this story. When Po goes to the peach tree, he meets Oogway properly for the first time. They have a conversation. At first, Po is reluctant to tell him anything about why he's upset, but shortly after Oogway asks him what's bothering him, he tells him. Po explains that he probably sucked more than anyone in history and in the history of Kung Fu, and that he feels like the Furious Five hate him, and that he'll never ever amount to anything even remotely close to what they have. After this, Oogway gives Po some very good advice, and it is probably my favorite line in the entire movie. Yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift. That is why it is called the present. He seems to be the only one with any trust that Po is able to do anything. This is the advice that Po takes to heart and returns the next day with a resolve to never quit. This is what leads to the day of rigorous training and butt beating. You can't change the past, and you'll never know what comes next. But what you can control is what is happening now. You can push through. I feel like at this moment, before Oogway, Po was really debating giving up, just like Shifu had been trying to make him do all day long. After he gets word that Tai Lung has escaped prison, he runs to find Oogway at the peach tree. Oogway tells Shifu that the only one that can stop Tai Lung is the Dragon Warrior, who is Po, the big fat panda. In order to train Po, he tells Shifu that he has to let go of the illusion of control. Of course, Shifu tries to counter this, but Oogway tells him that a peach will always give a peach tree, and a peach tree will always drop a peach. You can't control how long it takes to grow, when the fruit is ready to harvest, but a peach can accomplish a lot more if taught correctly. Shifu promises that he will believe in Po and train him to be the Dragon Warrior. With this piece of wisdom and the promise that he will believe in Po, he returns to the Furious Five to tell them that Tai Lung has escaped. So he is going to train Po to be the Dragon Warrior like Oogway wanted and said he could be. Would Shifu have trained Po if Oogway was not there? I don't think so. I don't think there would have been any training beyond the first day, and eventually Shifu would have just kicked Po out. This is because throughout the entire story up to this point, Shifu has had profound prejudice against Po. So Shifu informs the Five and Po that the only one that can stop Tai Lung is Po, the panda. Po does not react well to this and tries to flee. He chases Po and stops him from leaving. This is the moment when everything boils over the top. Shifu asks him why he didn't quit sooner, when he knew that Shifu was trying to get rid of him. Then it all comes out. His stress, his low self-esteem, it all bubbles over. Po tells him that everything Shifu did to him hurt, but it could never hurt as much as it did just being him every single day. He believed Shifu could change him into someone else. He held out hope that this was possible, and that is why he stayed. Because he wanted to be someone other than himself. When Shifu says he can change him, Po asks him how, and Shifu admits that he just doesn't know how. Honestly, it's really sad that he dislikes his life so much that he'd rather be berated by someone than actually be himself. That is exactly what Po was dealing with, and it is what a lot of people deal with on a daily basis. Even with all of this being put in the open and on the brink of giving up, he doesn't leave. He stays. And what he does the next day shocks Shifu. The next day, Shifu finds Po doing some kung fu maneuvers to get some food, and even does a full split to get some cookies that were left in the top shelf. He realizes that the way to train Po is not the way he trained the Five and Tai Lung. Just like Oogway said, you have to be able to teach someone in a way that helps them. He gets through his prejudice he holds against Po and trains him in the way of Kung Fu. But instead of using the same amount of control he did over the Five and Tai Lung that he trained previously, and is eventually bested against Po in a Kung Fu fight over a dumpling. At the end of it all, Po doesn't even eat the dumpling. This shows the opposite of what happened earlier when Po spoke to Oogway under the peach tree, when he was told that he eats when he's upset. Him not eating here shows that he has improved himself, that he's full of confidence now, that he finally feels like he does truly belong with the Furious Five at the Jade Palace. He got tastes of it before, but now he feels what it's like to be completely confident in himself. His insecurities become much less of a problem once Shifu lets go of the control and changes how he teaches. Po blossoms. He goes from a novice who knows basically nothing to becoming the person or panda he is supposed to be. However, under the surface, some of the insecurities still remain. Even after being able to turn some of his unique characteristics into strengths for him. After the Furious Five come back defeated by Tai Lung, Shifu finally thinks that Po is ready for the Dragon Scroll, and that he truly is the last hope to defeat Tai Lung. Everyone is shocked to realize that the scroll says and does absolutely nothing but show the reflection of the person holding it. Suddenly, everything comes crashing down. All hope seems to be lost here. That scroll was supposed to give him otherworldly power, but it does absolutely nothing. So they evacuate the valley as Shifu stays to distract him. To try and make Po feel better, his father tells him the secret ingredient to his secret ingredient soup. He tells him that the secret ingredient is nothing. There is no secret ingredient. He tells Po that in order for something to be special, someone has to believe that it is special. Your flaws and differences make you special. You just have to believe that you yourself are special. Oogway always believed Po was special. It took some time for Shifu to come around, and even longer for Po himself to come around on this truth. He defies his doubts and gets past the imposter syndrome. Po tells himself that yes, he is able to be the Dragon Warrior. He is worthy, and it does not matter that he is a big fat panda. He runs back and saves Shifu from Tai Lung, who does actually have a good reason for being mad at Shifu. And then Po does battle with Tai Lung, using all his special attributes he learned from training to his advantage against Tai Lung. Unfortunately, Po is eventually knocked down, and Tai Lung gets his hand on the scroll. There's nothing there. Just like before, nothing but a reflection. Tai Lung and Po had very different reactions to learning of the truth of the Dragon Scroll. After explaining to Tai Lung the meaning behind the scroll, Tai Lung lashes out, angered that everything he thought was in the scroll never existed. He put all his worth in being the Dragon Warrior, and it really shows here. Even after being knocked down, Po gets back up and uses his unique abilities to be able to win against Tai Lung. Instead of being obsessed with what the Dragon Scroll held, Po found out and he accepts this truth, which Tai Lung does the opposite of. Here, he finally does what no one, even himself, thought he could do. Defeat a powerful kung fu user and save the valley from destruction. Po proved himself to be the true Dragon Warrior. Tai Lung thought he was owed the Dragon Scroll. Finally, at the end of everything, he gets what he has always wanted. The Furious Five and the villagers in the Valley of Peace all give him the respect he deserves. The Furious Five even call him Master. This is the first time they have fully showed their respect towards him. He finally gets it. Everything he ever wanted. Because he believed in himself. Kung Fu Panda is a very meaningful movie. But the part that is most meaningful in my opinion is the story of how Po grows. At the beginning, he's not confident. He deals with an insane amount of imposter syndrome. And we watch him go from that to a respected kung fu master who saved the valley from a destructive antagonist, and he finally gets accepted by those around him. Kung Fu Panda tells an amazing story and is one of the reasons why I got into story writing in the first place. Without movies and books like Kung Fu Panda, then I might not be in the position with my writing that I am today. I really love how Po and Tai Lung had opposite stories. Tai Lung was always told he'd be something special by Shifu. Po, on the other hand, was never told anything of the sort. Whereas Tai Lung fell to be the antagonist in the face of adversity, Po rose to the challenge. Both of them were written well, and I will absolutely return for Tai Lung's story one day. For now, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed and found it informative. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, as I post videos like this multiple times a month. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you next time. As always, never stop writing. Bye!